Make sure. We're going to get ready to get started in about 2 minutes. Just wait a minute, it's on the delay. Get started in about 20 minutes on the delay. Go ahead, say so.
All right. So if I'm reading, I'm probably reading at this volume. Can you hear me out there? All right.
I want to say Shabbat Shalom. We're going to get ready to get started in about 2 minutes. I want to say Shabbat Shalom. Get ready to get started. Am I all in the camera?
Yeah.
Can I see that phone? That's okay. Am I all in the camera?
There's a lag.
Yeah, it's like a 10-second delay.
Let's see.
We had to reposition today.
Oh, your dress is so beautiful.
All right, we're just waiting for. What did? Okay. All right, so everybody should have a lesson. This lesson is a what happened? I know some people are just because Oh, how many more people coming? Okay. Oh, that's okay. So let's go ahead and get started. All right. All right, everybody have a lesson. So our class is going to be, this is a continuation of Move Back. So this is somewhat of a continuation of the class we've been going over over the last few weeks. And let me see. When this goes to sleep, it's going to go off. All right.
Just leave it on.
Huh?
Leave it on.
Okay. So this is somewhat of a continuation. One thing I like about this class that we're going to have today is that this class is like a 2-for-1. So we're going to deal with a couple of different principles by dealing with this one topic today. Can someone give me maybe a minute or 2 minutes, kind of sum up what we did? If you had to sum up our class over the last 2 weeks, because that summary is going to help us move forward with this class. So can someone give me about a couple of minutes summary regarding what we talked about over the last 2 weeks? Does anybody remember what the class was over the last 2 weeks?
We were talking about identifying ourselves as a true Jew and dealing with the perception of what it means to be a Jew and dealing just people's perception and their misconceptions of what it means to be a Jew. So,
what are some of the 2 big points that we talked about? There are like 2 really main 2 main points that we made. I mean, we made a lot of points, but there were like 2, they were kind of off the wall points that would really strike people as being strange. Yes.
One point that was made is that only Jews will be saved.
So only Jews will be saved. Is that a radical statement?
Yeah.
So don't make that radical statement. The Bible can prove itself. So we use the Bible to prove those statements. But what is the problem with that statement that you
I
made?
was going to say, along with that, so then people might think, well, how can I become a Jew? Because there's a common narrative that being a Jew is a race. And so we spent time talking about how the Bible never defines being a Jew as a race, and how all throughout the Bible, from Old Testament to New Testament, how there's evidence that people became Jews. And even those who were, quote unquote, born a Jew, they still had to do a process of crossing over and giving their life to God and taking on his culture in order to be considered a true Jew.
Yeah. So with that being said, you shouldn't talk about everything that we talk about in here to people. They're just not ready for it. It's too complex. It creates these subcategories and these subtopics that we got to address. So if you got time to do it, and you know people and you're going to have that, time to go through, but it's a lot of stuff to go through. So we can't make those bold statements. Apostle used to make some bold statements. Some of those statements I'm not going to say, but he used to make some bold statements. Now, he was right in the statement he made, but I'm like, you can't say that. Like, you can't say it. Apostle want to get you for the shock and all value. And so we got to be careful of some of the things that we say. Even talking about you got to be Israel to be saved. Is that a true statement? Is that something that you should
lead the conversation.
Should you say that? To folks?
Even though you're the person you're talking to.
Yeah.
I thought that's the first thing you can say.
Yes.
Struggling with why we cannot speak the truth if the truth we no proof. If the proof is already written, why should we not say what is written?
Yeah. And the Bible says that you got to be wise to win souls. And if you are speaking truth and you have zero conversion, now everything that we speak is going to be truth. It's just, instead of just hitting up here, sometimes you gotta listen. Christ didn't do it. He said some things you're not ready for. He said it to his disciples, right? So some things people aren't ready for. And if my conversion rate is at a 0 by just hitting them with that top-notch thing, and I got a better conversion rate taking them through the steps. It's not that I'm not speaking truth. It's just like people are not ready to hear certain things, and Christ didn't do it.
I think it kind of also depends on the person's background.
Yeah.
And knowing what their understanding is and where they're coming from. Someone who is Christian, that's probably not the first thing that they're going to be able to process and understand, because a common narrative is that, Israel was the people of God in the past. He made a new covenant with us. This is probably not the first place you want to go. You have to get there at some point. But I can imagine a person or someone's background where that would be something in an early set of conversations you could have with them, if they already have a background about Hebrew, if they already know that, if they had a context of Israel and that those are God's chosen people, and they are seeking and trying to find how to be a part of that. So it just depends on the person's background where you would start and what they understand, I would say.
Yeah, if you make an emotional statement and tell your auntie or your grandmama or your mama, or just even people who've been in church for many years, you're not being saved by the name of Jesus. You done.
But that's what happened to me, right? Literally, but that bold statement brought me to a path of truth. And so this is what I'm saying. If a person has ears, let them hear, right? And so I don't know how. Is there a way then or is there like an evangelical process, right? If we are having to go through these steps and vet people and make sure that they can really receive this truth, how can we do that? Is there a class then that I can attend to be able to share? Because if I know these things, I feel that at the end of my life, I'm going to be charged if I just keep silent. Mm-hmm. I don't want that blood on my hands, so I think I just need a little more.
And we'll talk about, and that's a good question. And that's why we pray for divine wisdom, because everybody is different.
Sure.
You're going to address some things. There are some people I can say things to, but you want to talk and you want to discern where a person at.
Sure.
So if I don't know, I always kind of start baby ground level, see kind of what they gravitate to. But I will say something that somebody said, but I'll say that before we get offline. But there are things that you can do that can destroy. And I just kind of want to keep bringing us back to what Mashika said to his apostles. They were asked, he said, certain things you're not ready for right now. Listen, if he told them that you're going to be killed and slaughtered for my name's sake, them dudes were like, hey, we're not even strong enough to receive that. Goodbye. Right? So there are certain things that he didn't tell them off the bat. And so, that's a great question, but we have to understand that we're dealing with different people, and we have to discern those people that we deal with. There's a couple of old saying, there's more than one way to skin a cat. And so, we just have to kind of have that gift of discernment. The Bible says, why give that which is holy unto dogs? So I'm not about to give you certain things and you're not even receptive of the smaller things, right? So, and that's a great question. We can have a lesson in a class on that, but that's a great question. So let us go ahead and start with our class. And again, this class is a 2-for-1. We're going to continue talking about the people of God. We're going to talk about how to become the people of God. And we're going to deal with some things that Peter said regarding the true Jew, or if you want to call him the true Christian or true Yisrael. One of the first things we're going to do is we're going to talk about something called content and context. All right. If you haven't looked at the lesson, I just want us to take a stab at it, because it's important that we understand content, and it's important that we understand context and what's the difference. So before we read this first paragraph, we're going to talk about what that means. Does anybody tell me what is content? What does it mean when I say content?
Substance.
Okay.
It's like when you think about being like a math class, like the content could be like algebra or calculus or the information.
Yeah. And I think that was good information, because content is information. Everything that we read is content. Every conversation that we have, there's content there. So any form of communication is really considered content. Now, you may have content, but then you have context. Can somebody tell me the difference in content and context? It's kind of, then I call up Ms. Kaye.
Well, like we said, the content is the information. The context would be how the information is being used within the content, or like the situation of how the information is being utilized, or how it's being given, or how it relates to another subject or things like this.
If I had that, go ahead, Ms. Kaye.
Kind of like what she was saying, context. An example I would think of, like in literature. In literature, you can use context clues to infer what's going to happen in the future, or use context clues to understand what's going on in the moment that you read.
Okay. Ms. Esnaya, can you shut that door for me? Yes. That was good, Ms. Kaye.
The other thing I would use, like information, is the context.
Yes.
The context helps you really understand the information, understand the situation. So you can use, if you take out the context, you can get the wrong information.
Sure.
In this situation, you could say from the Bible, you could find a couple of verses where something is being said about don't go to Bethel. But what's the context? The context is that that was a Bethel that had fallen, and that there were things that were being done at that location that you shouldn't be doing. And so the context is important, so you don't walk away with the wrong conclusion.
Okay. And here's the problem with religion, people, the world. They're reading the content. And there are certain things that are said in one place that if I read it in isolation of other Bible verses, it appears as if it's saying one thing. But when you take it in context, then there are other Bible verses that make one Bible verse clear. People say, I read the Bible from front to back, and you still don't know nothing. Read it from back to front, you still won't know nothing. Because the Bible isn't written that way, right? And so I got a little example, a little corny example, and we're going to see in this example about 4 sentences of content. And then we're going to get to a part in this paragraph that gives context to the content. So it helps us to interpret the content. Without the context, we cannot interpret the content. The Bible says it this way, line upon line and precept upon precept. There are, stop it. There are what we call concrete Bible verses. And then what are the other type of Bible verses that exist? They're ambiguous Bible verses. And we're going to see even in the scriptures the Bible verses we're going to read, it's ambiguous until you kind of get to the end of the Bible verse. Then it's going to give context to all the stuff that we just read. So can somebody read this example? It gives us a better understanding if we haven't gotten the example of content and context. All right, I want you to read a little bit loud.
From the beginning, or just for example?
No, we just want to read the example.
I just bought a brand new crib. Content.
Do you know what that is? You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, you don't know what I'm talking about. I just bought a crib. So you don't know what I'm talking about. All right, I just bought a crib. What's the next sentence?
When I surprised my wife and showed her the crib, she was so excited and overwhelmed with emotions. She cried.
Ooh, look what how did he thought she cried because of the crib I bought. Right? That's content. Keep reading.
This will be our first child, and all we have left to do is buy a humidifier, change the pad, and a baby monitor.
So does that give context to the content?
Which kind of crib?
So what crib am I talking about? Well, the baby crib, right? And so this is how the Bible is written. Yep.
I was saying, as we were reading the example, when you were like, you know what kind of crib I'm talking about, some people are thinking house. And in my mind, I'm thinking baby because that's my life, that's my situation right now.
Sure.
So I was going to say the way that people perceive the content, I'm sorry, the content
Yeah.
depends on their experiences that they have in their life, and that goes with witnessing and when to be wise and how to give content information and things of that nature. It depends on the situation, it depends on educational background, things like that. That nature.
So a lot of other factors come into play. I told you guys the example before. Where I thought book club was stupid. I thought book club was stupid. What you in a book club for? You read a book. It's kind of hard sometimes, and I guess it depends on the book. Sometimes the writer has something in mind when he's writing, but the way you may read it, you may not interpret it the way the writer was writing it. So everybody's trying to get into the writer's mind, and this is what he meant. There are movies that I watch, and I'm still trying to figure certain things out. And I don't like doing all the, watching the movies and the author speak, or the producer speaking. The commentary stuff. I don't like it. And I do it. I've been watching Lord of the Rings about 15 times, and I'm still like, wait a minute. Huh?
I didn't watch Lord of the
Man, look, 15 times, and I'm still like, wait a minute. Right? So my interpretation might be wrong than what the producer was trying to get out. Right? So we see the difference in content and context now. We're going to talk about what does it mean to be cleansed. And then we're going to read Peter's vision. Remember, I said this is a 2-for-1. We're going to deal with people, and we're going to deal with dietary. Right? So if I can get a reader, what does it mean to be cleansed? Because this is talking again about the Father's ability to cleanse those that are unclean. What does that mean? Now, in context, you're going to deal with a group of folks. In particularly the Hebrew Israelite community. Now, you have people there in Judaism that still, they think a little bit like the Hebrew Israelites. Oh, you can be converted. There's moderate Judaism that will allow you to become a Jew. You can be converted, but what you don't know is you still a second-class citizen. If you wasn't born, as they say, in Israel, or your mama wasn't born in Israel, something like that, you could never really be a true Jew. You could never really be fully cleansed. Hebrew Israelite side say the same thing. I don't care if they accept other races or not. If you wasn't born dark skinned from Cuba, from Mexico, from wherever, you can't really be like us. I used to go to a place years ago, and I know that they will allow you to come in, they will allow you to call yourself Israel, but they say you spiritual Israel, we physical Israel. Right? And so we got to deal with that. This is a continuation again on what we talked about. Some things we talked about last week and the week before is dealing with more of your Christian friends, people in Christianity. But you're going to cross this bridge, you're going to have to deal with this situation too. So let's go ahead and read what does it mean to be cleansed. If I can get a reader, go ahead.
What does it mean to be cleansed? When God cleanses a person, whether they are Yisrael or of any foreign nation, they are clean and can become a part of his family, Yisrael.
So we talked about last week how people can become Jew. But what we're saying here, and listen, in my common sense, I serve a racist God. How crazy does that sound? I serve a God that no matter what I do, I have no chance at salvation.
After he created you that way.
Yeah, he created you. Well, people say, well, that was part of the curse. That's crazy. Oh, so being Caucasian was part of a curse? Being of another race was part of a curse? That's not biblical. The Bible talks about entertaining foolish questions. Don't entertain foolish questions. Okay? Keep reading.
Both those who were of the circumcision, natural born Jews, or of the uncircumcision, Gentiles, had to go through a process of spiritual circumcision, which is done by the Father.
Do we all understand that?
Everybody got it.
Everybody. You know how I know? Because he says, Jacob have I loved. Esau I hate. He said the promise was given to Isaac and not his brother Ishmael. He said to the Jews in the book of Matthew, he says, you are of your father. They said, we have never been in bondage. We are of Abraham's seed. He said, I know that you are of Abraham, but you seek to kill me. You are of your father, the devil. And these were people who Christ said, you were born out of the lineage of Abraham, but you don't belong to me. So it don't have nothing to do with no natural, nothing. Okay? No matter what we look like, there's a predestined seed set in those people who are going to be saved. You may get it. Your mama may not get it. Your brother may not get it. Your best friend may not get it. One of your children may get it. The other one may not get it. You don't have nothing to do with that. He says, if my people, which are called by my name, he acknowledges Israel as his people just because they have the name. That don't mean you're going to be saved. He says, but if you humble yourself and pray and seek his face, hold on, and turn from your wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and forgive your sins and heal your land. So there are a whole bunch of folks call themselves Israel that's wicked. Keep reading.
There is only a need for cleansing when someone is dirty or spiritually contaminated or defiled. Christ stated we must be cleansed, born through the water and spirit to enter the kingdom of heaven. God, Elohim, showed Peter through the vision that when he cleanses a man, do not call him common or unclean.
Okay. I'm going to do something a little different. I want to go to, well, let's read that last sentence again.
God showed Peter through the vision that when he cleanses a man, do not call him common or unclean.
Okay. So when Elohim cleanses a person, you don't have the right to say they white. They are the uncircumcision. That was a prostitute for 15 years. She unclean. I don't care how many times you baptize her. But who he clean, he says, don't you call common or unclean. Now, I want to, before we read this, I want to go to the next page so that we can make sure that we understand what these two words mean, common and unclean. Again, we're going to, 2 for 1. We're going to deal with people. We're going to deal with dietary. This is one of those seemingly contradicting Bible verses, or we call it apparent contradiction. And Minister Ezzy, apparent contradiction or seemingly contradicting Bible verse is what?
Apparent contradiction, a seemingly contradiction Bible verse is it appears that the Bible goes against another Bible verse. It doesn't, but if you don't have the right context, like we're talking about, it's going to seem like the Bible is condemning the Bible.
Yeah. And one of the things we do, we have classes that we teach. If you want to be successful in your ministry and what Yah has called you to do, you better understand the seemingly contradicting Bible verse of all the principles that we teach. Because when people reject the 7-day Sabbath, they're going to reject them based off of Bible verses that look like it's talking against the Sabbath. When they reject the dietary law, there are about 5 Bible verses that appear to contradict the dietary law if you read them out of context.
Yep.
And this is one of them. Whether it's the people of God, whether it's grace, whatever, whether it's the law, there are Bible verses that appear to contradict. So in order for you to really be effective, you must deal with those verses that appear to contradict. Okay? So what I want to do is I want to go to the second page, and let's go to the bottom of the second page. And we want to deal with these two words. We want to deal with common, and then we want to deal with unclean. All right. So Shabbat Shalom. All right. So let's talk about common. He says, call no man common or unclean. Can somebody read the definition of common?
Common, to come in contact with something that is in opposition.
Good. We said it. Now I need you to explain it. I would need you to explain it in your own words. Common means what? Okay, so let's talk about that. Can somebody give me an example of common? Okay.
Yeah, I can give an example. An example of that is the Bible verse with Peter when y'all had gave him a vision.
All right, we ain't gonna do that. We're gonna end up going to that Bible verse, but I just want you kind of just think in your own term. There's another. Well, we gonna read that Bible verse too, but I don't want to read that one because we're gonna talk about what you're gonna say. I'm gonna call on Brother Lonzo. You had your hand up, so did I?
Well, my example is going to be a real life example, and I think it's been mentioned before about certain foods that we may eat or should eat. My example is, each week my firm they order food for all the employees on Mondays and Friday.
Yeah, I need to come work with you, working, bro.
So they may order sandwiches just on Monday, but they'll put the turkey and the chicken sandwiches in the same container as the pork sandwiches. So just because all that stuff is in the same container and it came into contact with something that I'm against or something that I'm opposed to, which is the pork, I can't eat the sandwiches now.
Yeah,
it's all contaminated.
Yeah, I was telling somebody that my sister lived in Peoria, and her husband, like, oh yeah, oh, come on, I know you guys eat kosher, you guys eat whatever. I got some stuff for you guys to eat. I'm like, all right. I didn't want to go anyway. I didn't go for the food because I didn't want to go 2.5 hours. And I get there, and he's like, oh, we got your food. We're going to get your stuff ready here. I go outside, and I'm talking, and he lets the grill up. And I'm looking over to the grill, and this dude got a big old slab of pork rib on the top, dripping pork juice all on the bottom grill. Now, can we eat?
Right here.
No, sir. And can we eat chicken?
Oh, yes.
Can you eat kosher hot dogs? Ooh, I used to love me some kosher hot dogs back then. So that's okay, right? But when you come in contact with something that you can't have, then that's considered common. Okay? So there is, let me see, before I open my mouth and say it. Okay, I think I can say it because I didn't put it in here. No, it isn't here. So we'll get it in the next Bible verse. So everybody understand common. Good. Can somebody give me a definition of unclean? What does unclean mean?
Defiled, morally or spiritually impure.
Okay. Defiled, morally, spiritually. Can somebody give me an example of unclean?
Yeah, eating pork.
Good.
You used to like.
Girl. With the Italian sausage?
Yeah. Over there picking off your defiled pork to try to eat
So
some common pizza.
it's the sausage itself unclean, but the fact that you done picked it off, now looks like cheese pizza is common.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was.
So we can't have stuff that's common.
He thought he was
Like
bad.
him, we have stuff that's unclean. So
Right. And so I want you to remember that in the dietary, because we're going to talk about.
something that's common has come into contact with something unclean.
Yeah. Can somebody think? And I don't want you to give it away, but can you think about something in the Bible where we see this happening?
That's not the example we already made. So.
It is, but okay.
I guess when Paul was witnessing to the Gentiles, they accused him of doing something that was wrong.
Yeah, well, that's an example. They were mad at him. They were mad at him. Now I understand why they have that law. I completely understand. Well, they had just about being around people who wasn't a Jew. It's almost like your children. You got children, and you got a sister that's not in the faith. She got kids, or you got kids that's the same age, and you kind of scared at times to let your children go over there because your sister eat any and everything she want to eat. Oh, girl, no, don't worry about it. We're gonna cook the kids something else. Well, yeah, you done cook pork chops, and you done kind of wiped it out with some paper towel, and now you done put a chicken sandwich in there for the kids, right? So you keep your kids kind of away from that environment around common folks, because at some point,
It's gonna cross the.
yeah, it's dangerous for our kids to go to college, because they're around a whole bunch of common folks.
I was just telling Mr. Hannah, one of my aunts was so nervous about messing something up because she didn't understand all the details. When I was still at her house and the Sabbath came in, she started turning all the lights off. She was like, "Just sit there till your mama get here." Well, I'm not gonna don't do nothing. Just sit right there. She on her way.
What's that?
One example I can think of, this is in the perception of the Egyptians. They got a law where the Hebrews can't eat at the same table as the Egyptians because the Hebrews, their diet, they have lamb in their diet. And they find that the Egyptians find that disgusting. They can't sit at the same table. And that's why during the story of Moses, they told them that, can we sacrifice our Passover outside of Egypt, then come back? So the Egyptians had this, they whole idea of common to them was, y'all can't eat with us.
Yeah. Yep. Good. All right. So with that, we're going to talk about Peter's vision. All right. And we're not going to read all of it, but I encourage you to go back and read all of Acts where this conversation took place. So what we're going to do is we're going to read Acts. I forget what chapter this was. It was a 10. We're going to read verses 9, and we're going to go down to verse 16, and then we're going to jump down to the context. We're going to jump down to verse 28. And then I want to kind of bring back something in the dietary law. Let me see if I should do it now. All right, don't let me forget. I'll do it after you read this. All right, so can I get somebody to read? And I'm going to stop you at a couple of different points that we have that's in bold.
Peter's vision. Peter's vision had clean and unclean animals that were alive. Content, verse 9. On the morrow, as they went on their journey and drew nigh unto the city, Peter went up upon the housetop to pray about the 6th hour. And he became very hungry and would have eaten. But while they made ready, he fell into a trance.
Good. So what are we talking about here? Are we talking about food or are we talking about people? Okay, we're talking about food. How do we know we're talking about food?
Very hungry.
We're talking about hungry. Look, they don't have nothing to do with people. Right? Not in this nation. There's some pagan, there's some nations that did that. But he was hungry, right? And he would have eaten. And so now he goes and he falls into this trance. Have people been in trance? Have you guys fell into trance before? You ever?
I got daydream, but not like.
Right, like trance. Like, have you ever just kind of been doing something, looking somewhere, and then all of a sudden you zoned out? You're like, man, I kind of was zoned out for a minute, and then you thinking about something when you in that trance for a few minutes. And so this is what Peter fell in. Now, this is more than 5 or 10 seconds. Now, he was in the trance for a while. Okay, so Yah is about to deal with Peter on a particular issue. This principle is not a new principle. It was always Yah's will for man to come and to accept him. The stranger, the Gentile, we read it when they come out of Egypt, right? We read it last week, where the stranger joined themselves. And he says that when they're circumcised, they're just like one that was born. And there's one law for the stranger and one law, so they were no longer strangers. Because the Passover can only be eaten by who?
Yes,
No exceptions. So the fact that the Gentiles or the stranger was able to eat of the Passover when they came out of Egypt tells me what?
They became
They became Israel. Everybody understand that? Okay, let's keep reading.
But while they made ready, he fell into a trance and saw heaven opened and a certain vessel descending upon him, as it had been a great sheet knit at all four corners, and let down to the earth, wherein were all manner of four-footed beasts of the earth, and wild beasts, and creeping things, and fowls of the air. And there came a voice to him, Rise, Peter, kill and eat.
So we still talking about food, right? He told Peter to kill and eat. Now, these things were living because he told him to kill it, right? Okay, keep reading.
But Peter said, Not so. We're in the New Testament, Adonai. For I have never eaten anything that is common or unclean.
Now, I'm going to challenge and ask you this. Now, I always ask this when we read this because Peter was bold.
That's not
Peter was bold. How many people, you're going to say, yeah, because Peter did it. If the Lord spoke to you and told you, I don't want to say nothing gross. I'm about to say,
Mary and prostitute.
no, you're gonna marry a prostitute if you tell you. Because, hey, there's somebody,
just to eat some pork, right?
if a voice told you and you recognize the voice, so heaven up as Lord. I want you to understand how important the scripture's commandments are. Peter said, not so. You talking to God. How many people tell God not so? That's what I thought.
I wouldn't say that. I'm like, can you explain?
He said,
I don't understand.
he said, not so. Not so. Because he understood the law. He understood the dietary law.
Why he did not be broken.
Damn. So you can tell, Yah, I'm gonna leave that to your discretion. When something is in the Bible, you better understand and know the Bible. Because Satan gonna speak. And you think Satan's speaking to you, right? Telling you to do something. That's not Yah. Yah told me, be very careful saying what Yah told you. All right. But he says, I have never eaten anything that is common or unclean. All right, keep reading.
And the voice spake unto him again, the second time. What Elohim hath cleansed, that call not thou common. This was done thrice, and the vessel was received up again into heaven.
Now, let me ask before we go to this last Bible verse. Did Peter eat anything that was on that sheet? No? Can someone explain to me? Now I want to jump to the dietary law. You telling me that God can't clean a pig? Why? Okay.
Lord God changes not.
He don't change. But here's the thing. There is something about the anatomy of animals which allow us to eat those things or not eat. It's something about the anatomy. If you pray over pork, does the anatomy of a pig change?
Its function as a scavenger doesn't change.
Right? If you pray over catfish, how come prayer doesn't change? The-
Not that.
But then,
what is something about the anatomy of the catfish why we can't eat it?
It doesn't have the filtration.
You said bleeds? Oh, all right, yeah. So it don't have scales and fins. Don't matter what you say. Farm raised. It was whatever. It don't matter. The Bible told you, for those that understand the law, dietary law, you don't eat anything that got scales, that does not have scales or fins. Now you can go and read what do scales do and what do fins do. Right? Yeah, it filters. People had this debate whether you can eat tilapia. Right? Why? You know what the debate about tilapia is? Huh? No. Huh? They bottom. They bottom feeders. But it got scales and fins. Yeah, so you know that's why a lot of people won't eat tilapia. Now you can say they dirty. You can see at the bottom of it. You can say whatever you want to say. They got scales and fins. So they have the filtration to be able to cleanse themselves, you know, of all toxins and whatever. So we got to stick to the Bible. Stop adding to the Bible. I mean, I get. I mean, if you don't want to eat it, you just don't eat it. Yeah, but you can't tell folks, man, there's a bottom feeder, you shouldn't eat that. There are people that was in here that was doing that, but they got scales and fins. Okay. Now is the context of what we just read. So again, this is 2 for 1. We can get a whole bunch of stuff from the dietary law, and at some point, you're going to have to be able to defend this because people will read this to you saying, well, God has cleansed, you can't, you know, yada, yada, yada. Yeah. And we deal with those seemingly contradicting verses. Again, we have lessons where we done found the 4, 5, 6 seemingly contradicting verses when we talk about the dietary law, and we deal with those. All right. Verse 28, who's reading?
And he said unto them, ye know how that it is an unlawful thing for a man that is a Jew to keep company or come unto one of another nation.
I want to stop there. It is an unlawful thing. So the Jews, I'm not talking about the true Jews, they had a law among the Jews that you can't keep company. Now, I don't know what the punishment was, but you can't keep company with a person of another nation. They want to restrict salvation. And we're going to talk about some things that Christ did. They want, no, this belongs to us. You know, we got Hebrew Israelites, some of the extreme. This is what we got. This is our thing. I say it all the time. NAACP didn't work. Black Panther Party didn't work. This is our thing. And so we don't want no other nation to partake in our thing. We got the Savior, and we're going to exclude everybody from being part of this thing. So in Judaism, they had this law that you can't keep company with people who were not Jews. We don't want this thing contaminated. Yes.
I was going to say, it's another example, like a clear example of why L tells us not to add or to take to the law. So by adding this tradition or this law they had amongst themselves, they probably did it to be like, oh, that'll keep us from doing things we shouldn't do.
Sure.
Culturally, being around other people. But the downside to that is now, if you don't interact with these people, how do you have the opportunity to convert somebody if you can't even be around?
Yeah. Well, they have the Hebrew Israelite mentality. They punishment is hell. We God's people. Right? And you see that with kids, or when people have adopted kids, or just, I mean, you see that. That, no, this is my mama. No, and they want that type of love. Even older kids and younger kids. You got a newborn. Some of the older kids act real funny.
Talk about it.
So, stepchildren. Yep. Stepchildren.
People feel like this is mine.
Yeah. Yeah. Some kids don't want their mom or daddy getting married because,
It's my mom and dad.
yeah, so, but when you have that type of relationship, my children, I don't call them my stepchildren. Look at them like they're my biological kid. I'm like, this is my son, this is my daughter. I don't say this is my step nothing. All the things that my biological kids get, my non-biological kids get the same thing because they've essentially taken on the name, right? For what? You all going in there? Oh, okay. All right. Does anybody have any questions so far? We did? Oh, okay. Keep going.
But Elohim hath showed me that I should not call any man common or unclean.
So you underline that in your Bible. Any man. He had to get a revelation on what he was talking about. Now, if you continue to read the Bible verse prior to this, after Peter came out of this trance, Peter said, I'm confused. Peter still didn't know what that dream meant. But one thing Peter said, I'm not eating nothing clean. But he didn't understand the dream. So go back and read what's before 28, somewhere between 17 and 27, and read that. And Peter was still kind of perplexed by this trance. Yes.
So, let's be clear, verse 28, when Peter said, that it's unlawful, he's talking about the law of traditions of men. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So understand that too, because people say, the Jews among us, there was a law that you shouldn't keep. No, that was the traditions that they had.
And there was I forget the name of the person. There was someone that a Gentile he was gonna witness to, that El had to first take him through this to understand.
So,
Who was it?
Cornelius?
I'll have to look it up.
Are you talking about who Peter was talking to?
Yeah.
He was dealing with Cornelius. And Cornelius was a Gentile. And you go back and read it. He was of the Italian band, he was of the army. And however Cornelius got exposed, he got exposed. And Cornelius started praying to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And he feared whatever he knew. He feared El. And he was paying alms. He was giving money. He was doing all that he knew to do. This is how I know that Yah don't deal with folks completely on an individual basis. When people say, well, I don't need nobody to teach me. The spirit of El spoke to Cornelius. And the spirit of El did not teach Cornelius nothing. But he says, what I'm going to do to you, Cornelius, is I'm going to send somebody to you that can give you what you need to be saved. Every single one of us is here by divine design. That somebody was put in your life so that you can hear this. That's including myself. I couldn't hear this and get this on my own unless I came here and heard from the person who had it. And so that's that's for everybody. When you talk about having complete truth or being circumcised by El, you got to hear first. You got to be taught first. Okay? So I should not call any man common or unclean. All right. Any questions, any comments? Everybody understand where we're at? All right. Now, I'm going to read this is from the King James, Acts the 10th chapter, and this was afterwards. This is verses 34 through 36. This helps us to understand that other nations, other people that are not part of, and let me just say this too. There are several places in the Bible that tell us that Israel was taken into captivity. And in those places, it says that Israel mingled with other nations. And so if you wanted to kind of insinuate some type of pure bloodline, the Bible says that they mixed with every nation. So there is no what folks call pure bloodline. Yeah, you know how you're gonna have a pure bloodline? By taking that cup, by having that blood transfusion on Passover when you take communion. Yeah, you better not say that, folks. Blood transfusion? I'm not coming to that place. But when you drink of his,
when Yahshua told some of the people that were following him, unless you drink my blood and my body, you don't have any part of me. They said, whoa.
Juices. And apostles do that, make some bold radical. Unless you listen, you tell me unless you drink of my blood and eat of my flesh, you can't have no part with me. They said goodbye. That's all we needed to hear. But they mingle with other nations. Then you had the Egyptians. And I say this all the time. If you just take the concept of what they teach, did the Egyptians look like Israel?
Yes.
They look like Israel.
Yeah.
There's a number of reasons we know. But Mashiach was in Egypt, Moses, and he was able to hide. So the Egyptians look like Israel. What about Ham? You know about that cursed nation?
Yeah, they got the same father.
So they look just like
Ham and just that.
Israel. So there's no way, I promise you, maybe 99, and I'm just throwing out a huge number, it could be 80 something, of people can't trace their lineage 5 generations. You can't go back to the 1700s to find out, your relatives and stuff like that. So how you gonna go back to the BC period? Okay. Let's read a couple of different versions from Acts the 10th chapter, verse 34 through 36. This is the King James version, and then we're going to read the easy to read version. Because we got to be able to pull out. We got to be able to minister and witness to all types of people. People that are in Christianity, people that are Hebrew Israelites, people that are non-believers. Right? We got to be able to have that arsenal for all these people. So let's go ahead and read. If I can get a different reader to read the King James version, Acts the 10th chapter, verse 34 through 36, and then I'm going to get somebody to read that next one, the easy to read version.
Then Peter opened his mouth and said, of a truth, I have perceived that God no respect of person, but in every nation he that feareth him and worketh righteousness is accepted with him.
Stop. In what nation?
Every nation.
What does that mean?
Everybody.
It's not a race.
Not a race.
He said every nation. Now I'm gonna tell you what they're gonna say. Yeah, he's talking about in every nation.
There's a black.
There are black folks there. And that's who he's talking about. You add to the Bible. Stop putting in the Bible what's not there. He says in every nation. Now, what do you need to do in order for him to accept you if you're in these nations?
Fear him.
Uh-huh.
And worketh righteousness.
And what did he say?
Is accepted with.
So he's going to accept you. Keep reading.
The word which God sent unto the children of Israel, preaching peace by Jesus Christ. He is our Lord. He is Lord of all.
Now you're going to say the word which he sent unto the children of Israel. Yeah, he sent it to the children of Israel. He's telling you that other folks, and they use that to the children of Israel, that it was to the lost sheep. It was to lost sheep that were in other nations. Yeah, it was to the lost sheep in other nations. But the lost sheep in the other nations was not attached to a color or a race. All right? Don't entertain foolish questions. Don't entertain foolish statements. Let's read the easy to read. Who want to read the easy to read version?
Yeah, can I say?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, it's interesting that in the Bible verse it said, I perceive, and we were talking about perception, that given the right content, context out of the content. When he said, I perceived, he perceived that interpretation because of his experience that he had in the dream. So that goes to show that if you don't have experience with ill, certain experiences with ill, you can't perceive, you can have the content, but you can't perceive the context. He didn't perceive the context until after the vision or the trance occurred. So
and you got to have an experience. There are some things you can come in here and be smart. Elder Erie taught me, man, for days and nights and hours. But there are certain things that if you don't have that time, which produces wisdom, you really don't fully kind of understand. I came into the church gung ho. Man, I had Paleo Hebrew necklace, wearing it outside the shirt. I don't care what I had on. I had my big Paleo Hebrew bracelet. I had all, and I'm coming to folks, and I'm coming with the sword. I'm coming tough. And I found out 2-3 years, because I was excited and I was gung ho, man, this is the truth. I'm about to go kill him. Ain't do nothing for me. Couldn't get nobody. Because it was too strange. It was too radical. And so my perception of what I thought I should be doing was wrong. Because it didn't yield, it didn't produce any fruit. And then it took a while for me just to kind of sit back and watch and observe. And that is what really made me understand other religions and other denominations or other people. I forget what that form of psychology is, that you gotta sign that waiver before you take the class.
That's crazy.
You all heard about that? It's some form. You know why? Because you crawled up in the folks' head.
They about to mess you, man.
I gotta Google it, but you gotta do it. Huh?
Before you take the class, you gotta sign it?
It's something about you gotta sign a waiver because somebody said it, and then there was somebody in the church who took that class, because it teaches you how to get in folks' head and control their mind. It's some crazy, it was a crazy, and I forget what that psychology is called. But it's something that you gotta sign, so you saying, I'm not gonna do that, but
I'm gonna mind control people. After you teach me how to do it.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna do.
And I'll find out what that course. No, I didn't take it.
She said, I got gas.
Yeah.
Ronnie, like, I got some questions.
But I want you to think about it. Y'all's going to give you that type of wisdom that you have to understand. Listen, I already know. I can have a conversation with you about a subject. I already got the 20 to 30 questions that you can possibly ask, and I already got a response for it. And and this is what I said about Apostle. There are things that Apostle would get upset with us about because he said, in his mind, you should know. I shouldn't have to tell you to come clean up. Oh, I shouldn't have to tell you to come bring me some food when I've been here sitting here slaving and working and stuff like that. So Apostle wouldn't say certain things. And Apostle taught a lot of theory. You ever heard Apostle talk about going to school, and you're supposed to go to school to get that information, but you're supposed to learn to jump from the information that you got. If you learn to do web design, okay, yeah, but you learn that, now you want to jump out and have your own web design business. Dr. Tate went to school for many years to become a doctor. But although there's a lot of things that she learned in theory, practical things, when you have to do certain things, that's what separates you from other doctors and other people, is that you are being innovative. You use the system to gain the knowledge, but you got to be innovative now. And the same thing happens with the Bible. Apostle gave us all these Bible verses, and it was like this one, and he's tying it together. And I understand it. I understand it in my sleep. But you understand the Bible verses, and all of us have been there. Take it out there. And you're going to see, I used you last week, nephew. I used you last week talking about boxing or a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, yeah.
You've been there. Man, you trained hard, you hit that heavy bag, and you did it. You was getting it. Got into the ring, and man, somebody went bananas on you. Right? So, although you put your time in, when it's time to actually box, whole different ball game. Right? Now, what you learned in theory and all the hitting the heavy bag should translate into your real fight. But that heavy bag is kind of swinging this way. And you got a little June bug dipping and doing all type of stuff. So you got to adapt and you got to adjust. And so we have to do, again, the same thing with the Bible. We have to be able to be practical. You got to know what folks are thinking. You got to know what's being taught out there. And then it helps you apply the theory, in this practical real life situation. All right. Easy to read version. Did we read that yet?
No.
Peter began to speak. I really understand now that God does not consider some people to be better than others. He accepts anyone who worships him and does what is right. It is not important what nation they come from. God has spoken to the people of Israel. He sent them the good news that peace has come through Jesus Christ, Lord of all people.
So what makes him the Lord of all people? Because now they say, I see, elder, he's the Lord of all people. Huh? What does that statement mean, the Lord of all people? Yes. Oh.
The Lord of all people is indicating that it's not just about like a race or like just about true born Jews. It's that any people who fears him, worketh righteousness, he's the Lord of all those people. It doesn't matter where they come from.
Yeah.
It's not like he's like, oh, I'm the Lord of the black people.
Okay. Good.
I was basically gonna say that, Lord of all the people that accept him. That's the context.
Give me a Bible verse. Give me a Bible verse. Give me a Bible verse. Man, you know it. Give me the Bible verse.
What?
There's another Bible verse that says exactly that.
That he's the Lord of all people that accept him.
Yeah.
I don't know what
John 3.
3:16.
For God so loved the world. Right? He said he loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. That
For this reason.
whosoever believe in him shall not perish. Well, if you don't believe in him, if you don't accept his doctrine,
Right.
So he loves the world because his people are in it. He don't love the world of sinners, the people who despise him, the people that hate him. But he loves the world because his people are here. All right. We're going to go over our last paragraph. Christ came for the lost. Christ came for the lost.
Christ came for the law. Christ, who is our perfect example, never accepted man or woman based on color of skin or whether or not they were originally part of his holy nation. Not all of those that were part of the nation of Israel did he accept. Salvation is based off of divine grace through faith, which is righteous belief in Yahshua Mashiach. All of his teaching and the demonstration of that belief through righteous living, no matter your race or origin. Those who have accepted the truth bear the family, bear the name.
Yeah, that was Rich Snake last. Look, add something into it. That is Okay, here's the Bible verse. I don't know where Ms. Nate put this Bible verse. But read that what it says. Again, we're dealing with this natural. That is,
Are the children of the flesh are not children of God, but the children of the promise are counted for the seed.
so the children of the flesh, because you consider yourself as naturally born, don't make you God's people.
Romans 9:8.
Romans 9:8. Okay? So it has nothing to do with the flesh. I'll read this last Bible verse. And I think this is kind of funny to me, this last Bible verse, because we're talking about Christ, who was our perfect example. 1 Peter 1:21, I believe. Is it 1:21? 1 Peter 2:21, one of the 21s.
Yeah.
It says that Christ has given us or left us an example that we should follow in his steps. Christ never taught what people are saying. They don't have the original gospel. Now listen what this Bible verse says, and we're going to get ready to close out.
Matthew 9.
And it came to pass, as Yasha sat at meat in the house. Now who's sitting? Our perfect example is sitting somewhere. Behold, many publicans and sinners came and sat down with him and his disciples. Who knows what a publican is? Tax collector. This is funny to me. And when the Pharisees saw it, they said unto his disciples, why eateth your master with publicans and sinners? And I think this is so funny to me because they hated tax collectors so much that they say, hey, nah, we're not talking about the sinners. But why you eat with tax collectors and sinners? So to them, the tax collectors was as equally, as the sinners. And they were upset because in their nation, they had this law that you shouldn't keep company with folks that are sinners. So Christ himself is dealing with, and he's eating with folks that are not part of the nation because they sinners. There might have been some people who were there who were Jews, but they were sinners. And I just thought that was funny to me. Like, they hate tax collectors that much. They said, why are you eating with tax collectors? And here's what Christ said. But when Yasha heard that, he said unto them that they that be whole need not a physician, but they that are sick. You sick when you in sin. You don't understand that the things that you doing is going to lead to eternal damnation. When you can't stop stealing or committing adultery or doing all these things that is against the will of El, you sick. But he says that they that be holding out of physician, but they that are sick. But go ye and learn what that meaneth. I will have mercy and not sacrifice, for I am not come to call the righteous. You already righteous. You just got to continue to live a righteous life. He says, for I am not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance. Now, who are the sinners? I'm not going to necessarily say that tax collectors were sinners, but because they was collecting taxes, the people looked at them as sinners.
They were common.
They were Gentiles. Listen, because we already know the Pharisees were sinners. Now, they were part of the nation of Israel, but they were sinners. You know how I know they were sinners? You are of your father, the devil. That means that you were a sinner.
You call them vipers, Chris.
Oh, he went in on it.
Can you explain something? I will have mercy and not sacrifice. Go ahead and learn what that means. I will have mercy and not sacrifice.
Is anybody? I will have mercy and not sacrifice. And then we want to go ahead and explain that. And then if somebody can kind of find another version, the ERV.
When he said, "I will have mercy and not sacrifice," what he's saying is that because back in the Old Testament, they dealt with every time they sinned, they sacrificed an animal for sin. So every time they sinned, they would use the animal to sacrifice. But the problem was they kept sinning, so they kept having to keep getting sacrificed.
Mhm.
But the point was for you to not sin. So what stops you from, because the wages of sin is death, was his mercy. So he would rather give you mercy than you just continue to keep sinning. So the mercy was supposed to change your heart to stop doing the sins.
Because the sacrifice is not.
Because it was temporal, because they kept doing it. It was just a temp fix, basically.
I'll read it in easy to read. That's exactly what you're saying.
Yep.
Thank you.
Matthew, the 9th chapter and the 13th verse. Well, I'll start from 12. Yasha heard them say this. So he said to them, it is to sick people who need a doctor, not those who are healthy. You need to go and learn what the scripture means. I do not want animal sacrifices. I want you to show kindness to people. I did not come to invite good people. I came to invite sinners.
Yeah, so he wants you to stop sinning, so that's why he brings his mercy.
I'm not in-
All right. All right. So I want to hear some comments, questions. We want to summarize what we talked about. We want to give a summary of what we talked about, and then we're going to kind of open up for discussions. Before you do that, we're going to get ready to end here online. We want to welcome and thank everybody who joined us online. We want to encourage you to visit our site, www.tvbethel.net. Go to our Facebook page, #Restoration Gospel, or you can watch us on YouTube at Bethel TV1. I think that's all we have for you. Look forward to seeing you next week at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. On behalf of our late restored Chief Shepherd, Dr. Amon, on behalf of Bethel Temple and Elder Nate, I'm Elder Al. I want to depart you as we greeted you by saying Shabbat Shalom.